would just ask you to join me in very warmly welcoming Oliver Skopec.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chloe, for that kind introduction. Thank you all for your interest and coming. I myself sat in this room listening to one of the GTEC Open Lectures last year, I think, when Martin Varsavsky, Spain-based entrepreneur, had a talk here, and he's really one of my idols, I have to say, so I felt super honored to speak in the same line of events. First of all, I have one volunteer job to assign. Is there anyone brave to volunteer? You really actually only need to watch. There's this habit of mine of pulling people into risky jobs. If there's no volunteer. Okay, see, we're all set here. If you would just really yell at me if I take more time than this on what I plan to do, it's up on here. Okay, first of all, I'd also not only like to introduce myself in a second, but get to know you a bit better. I see some Africa in the house. Who all has got relations to Africa already? Just put your hands up. That is impressive. Thank you. Who is already running a business or would consider himself an entrepreneur? And who of those who didn't raise their hand plan to found a company? Or okay, great. So this is well mixed. Let me start by just dropping a couple of facts on my person so you can get the context of what I'll be telling. I was born and raised in South Germany, Baden-Württemberg, by a family that's partly from Czech Republic. That I was made in '85, and then 10 years ago moved to Berlin and ended up where that yellow pin is, pretty much outside of Berlin, where I live with my wife and a little kid, and another one coming along for 2.5 years now. And I pretty much commute between Tanzania and Brandenburg to do what you don't see on here because it's so important it will cover all of the other slides, Tupomoja. And I've had a couple of interesting experiences in this entrepreneurial digital tech scene, which was mainly driven by SchülerVZ. I won't talk much about that because some of you might have come across this. Was basically a German Facebook kind of company. Then there was Rent and Roll, which is Airbnb for cars, basically, that failed collaterally because no one wants to give away his own car. And at least not in Germany. This is going quite well in France, UK, and the USA. You can see that I'm a passionate musician. I've co-founded a company in Switzerland in the e-commerce sector, which hopefully taught me some basic lessons before doing this Tupomoja venture. Fashion Friends was basically a clone of Brands for Friends, a very friendly clone because it was the same investors and the same code, but a different team, a different company, a different market, backed by Klaus Hommels and Oliver Jung, if you came across these names. And then Friendsurance is a really interesting, look it up, don't want to waste too much time. Beefy is the Berlin Institute for Innovation, is what I founded 6 years ago, just really to have a vehicle to do project-based stuff, to do consulting projects, to earn money while spending it on startups. And that's pretty much all I could say about myself. There's a nice, if you're a musician, check out chuckchuck.com. This is a patent we've done. It's a small percussion tool. And yeah, if you have any other questions, just call me up or write an email. So what I would like to do is tell you what I actually do, and then go a bit closer into how I do what I do and what I've come across, because that's somehow what Christoph asked me to cover. And I would just love to start by telling you about Tupomoja. For my friends in this room, you should use this link straight away so you get all the fancy background facts. and not the classified portal. So, e-commerce. It's a big deal, obviously, in this world. Retail is shifting into e-commerce more and more, and you have all these nice, large companies across the globe, and they produce all these nice numbers, and you would ask yourself, why is it not really happening in Africa? There are players, we've all heard of Rocket Internet's companies, they launched through AIG, Africa Internet Group, and there are companies like Conga and so on, but still, and compared to what's happening globally, and given the potential of Africa, it's really nothing. So, from a Tupumoja perspective, this might be one of the reasons. This is how a marketplace looks like from my perspective or experience in Tanzania. You have a bunch of people, and then there's one guy who needs a product, and there's actually someone who sells it, but there are a couple of problems in between. Now, luckily, there's one who has the money that this guy who needs the product actually needs to buy the product, but he can't get it from A to B, so luckily there is someone who could help wiring that money through some M-Pesa account, which has to go through his cousin's Tigo Money account first or so. And then there's still a problem with a heavy box because no one's prepared for that. Someone can carry the box but doesn't have a car, someone else does. It's all working really well on that super local level. So in competition to this, on the African continent, from our perspective, we have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of marketplaces like that. And they all have to kind of improve all one by another with everything that comes up. So if there's a new possibility to wire money, this has to really spread first. Every marketplace has to learn this on their own. If you have new products available in one country, this needs to somehow find its way through all of these marketplaces first. It's really a hassle, and this is why we felt like there's a huge potential right now. My co-founder, who has grown up in Tanzania and then went to University UK, did some real estate business in Germany, moved back with all his kids and family to Tanzania a few years ago, basically made that decision to go back because all of a sudden, obviously he was traveling back and forth all his life. He found out that now it's really easier to have data connection than to have electricity. So he thought this might be the perfect timing to start a digital business. And now we think we can actually build something if you do it in the right way. I'll get to that in a second. Or actually, I think I'll switch order. I think now is the time where you can actually build a business and a platform in Africa that has a chance to go against all odds, to go against the global players. Why is that? If you look at these companies on this outer circle, they all move into the African market, obviously, and they have forever. I mean, Barclays just pulled out of Africa last year, but still, they try to adapt whatever their business is to Africa for a long time already. And that's exactly the problem. They try to adapt the business they already have, right? They already have a DNA, they have a business model, they have certain rules and regulations and structures, and it's really tough for them to get to the core of an untapped geography. Then there's a second layer. We have VCs coming into the country. The blue arrow, they get a bit deeper because they can invest directly in independent startups, which there are not so super many. There are also not super many VCs who dare to invest a lot if you compare this globally. But they get a bit closer. Still, they're VCs. They have their checklists on what they need to find in a venture to be allowed to invest. So there's really only, let's say, 10 to 20%, this is really a rough guess, of the population is only being touched by these economic activities. And if you imagine if you'd sort of use this situation, use everything you can learn from that setting, in terms of who does what, with whom, why, what's the motivation, what's the path, what's the process, where's the fee, who makes money, who doesn't. If you try to learn from that and build something that we call a homegrown African model, something that rises from the habits and necessities of the majority of the people right now, then I think if you combine this with global tech skills and venture building experience, you can build something significant. And that's our philosophy. That's what we try to do. What is it that we try to do? There's basically 3 areas of business we got ourselves into. It started really only with media. I mentioned that Tupamoja started out as a classifieds platform, an SMS-based platform. So imagine you sending a text message to the Tupamoja database that you need a refrigerator. Someone else, a month ago, sent a text message to the Tupamoja database that he has a refrigerator he wants to sell. Now, some of our support staff would match you actively, send the both of you a message, hey, there is someone who matches your interest. Here's the, depending on your request, would you allow to give away your contact data directly, blah, 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 blah. Up until the point where you would actually talk to each other, given the phone connectivity, the fact that everyone has multiple numbers, the fact that there are just downtimes, and the fact that there's a delay between offer and demand. That's a really one problem already. Connecting the 2 actors, offer and demand. Even if you'd be able to have a proper phone conversation over this refrigerator would have to somehow get from your home to your home. And also you somehow have to pay each other, and this you can't do anything else but manage this on a very pragmatic, personal level. So you drive there, pick up what if you don't have a car? What if you don't have a car large enough to carry the refrigerator? And so on. Then, obviously, where do you drive? You get some sort of directions. There's no address. So she will tell you, just go down the street by the beach, take the 3rd large house that you see. Oh, what is a large house? And then there's a tree. That's the directions. That's her address. So it's really only having a media business, a classifieds business like eBay Classifieds, Craigslist, anything you know of, doesn't really help the problem. And this is especially the case with products, but it's the same with real estate, jobs. I mean, we've done quite well, I think, by putting 2,600 people into new jobs through the jobs classified space, just in 2014 only. But still, the process is uncomparable to what you'd be used to from developed countries, because the infrastructure behind the classifieds portal, behind the media, is already there. Phone numbers, addresses, processes, responsibilities, all of these things. So we figured we have to build this infrastructure ourselves. And this, and also we have to focus on the category that actually makes money, because it's very hard to make money from job classifieds or love and friends, and it might be possible in Western areas, but there's just no such experience in at least East Africa the way we see it. So we saw that small shops started to use our classifieds portal to sell their products. They would list every single item they have as a single classifieds listing and pay for every listing. We went like, cool. Yeah, and we earned about $3 per listing. And so they were obviously willing to spend money to advertise the products they sell. And we said let's do this more efficiently. Let's give them proper sites inside the portal. Let's also give them larger advertisements in our magazine. We publish actually a print magazine in Tanzania, which is the most read Swahili-speaking high-quality magazine in Tanzania, because there's actually really no other Swahili and English-speaking magazine the way we do it. So we have this as a channel to promote these products of our clients and so on. And then, as I said, only the media alone wouldn't really serve the case, so we had to find a way to deliver and collect the money ourselves. And what we came up with in terms of financial transactions, I won't bother you with too much software stuff, but what we kind of do is we connect to various payment providers, mobile money kind of providers, even international, some involve even bitcoins, and then it usually takes money to get it from A to B and from B to C, and that time in between is valuable for the transaction. So we use our own money in advance. So we pay the shop who sells the product before we actually have the money from the buyer, and that accelerates the payment and also allows us to use whatever way there is to collect or deploy money in terms of check or what all not, to make it easier for both the buyer and the seller. And in terms of logistics, you could think of us as a crowd sourcing job portal. We have a list of agents. Some have a motorbike, some have quick feet, some are a bus driver, and they are willing to deliver stuff from A to B if we call them and pay them for it. We have further 200 overland buses that travel, especially from Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, across all of the country, who then deliver these packages, or whatever it is, from the central bus station Dar es Salaam to a bus stop on a certain line. And then at this bus stop, the product will be picked up by the original buyer because there's no address. But the cool thing, in the end, if you put this all together, we're operating an e-commerce system that doesn't really need, for the users, for both the buyer and the seller, doesn't really need what e-commerce usually needs. The buyer could actually walk up to a bus station where there's an agent of ours, ask him for, let's say, a certain spare part for his motorbike. He would look it up in our database and like, okay, yeah, I can get this for you. Then this goes through our process. There's a shop that sells this. We just send them a message or even call them up. Hey, do you still have this product? Please have it ready. We will send someone. They don't have to do really anything else but selling it over their counter. And someone from our crowd will pick it up, take it to Central Bus Station, give it to a bus. The bus will take it to that guy where the buyer actually ordered the product from. And then 2 days later, he can pick it up there and pay in cash even if you want. So we do e-commerce without the buyer or the seller having to be online. Obviously, that is going to be the case some years down the road, and it's the case already if you look at the expats scenario, or if you look at the larger cities in Dar es Salaam and so on. But it only taps 10 or 15, whatever percent of the people who are online already. So this is why I think it's a perfect situation for an entrepreneur. It's a lot of problems. And that leads me to another chapter I was supposed to talk about. So Christoph asked me to talk about my personal journey as an entrepreneur. You judge whether that is interesting or not. But let me tell you, given the experience of Tupamorja and the other companies, how I like to work, and maybe put it in perspective to why I chose a company or a business model like Tupamorja, and what might happen inside Tupamorja the way I run it. The first thing I like to work within infrastructure. I always build infrastructure around me because I'm just not getting anywhere myself, so I need a super close team, at least as good as Olivia Pope's team is, and have people right next to me that I know for a long time that know something much better than I could even do. So I'm really traveling with a team across what I've been doing. I like to reduce stress by thinking in POI, so I would highly recommend, if you haven't done this, to limit your lunch locations to 2 or 3 per city, because then you know already where the power plug is and how the Wi-Fi works and how quickly you can order and get away. And this is just an everyday hassle that it might sound very stupid, but that's just what I've learned is super important in my everyday. My bag is super important. I could survive with this bag, I would bet, spontaneously, at least for a week, because there's everything inside. And if I start a new company, I really ask myself, what else do I need in my bag now? Because you want to be prepared for the unthought of as an entrepreneur. And my address book, I spend time. You usually do this once and then you kind of keep track of it, but really having your address book ready, I think I use about 250 different tags for all people in my address book to kind of keep an overview. If you don't really manage yourself as an entrepreneur the way you manage a company, you're lost. That depends on your personality, but I'm as chaotic inside as an organization can get, so I need to do that. Second, I really only want to do stuff that has potential. What do I mean by potential? That's a no-brainer, right? But potential, I want to do stuff where the market and the opportunities are as well very broad and wide, and also where there's a long runway. Let me do an example. If I would do a startup in Germany dealing with the reservation systems for healthcare appointments in nail studios or whatever, I'm sure there's a market for it. It just, from my perspective, isn't wide enough. As a startup, you usually pivot once or twice or more. So if there's not enough space to the left and to the right, there's already book a table, and there's only Germany, and they speak German, and so if it's not wide enough, it's I don't think that the chance is high enough for you to succeed, because the risk is already there. And also, I think it should be a very long runway. You should have a large audience in front of you, and also a long time. If you're in a market where your window of opportunity is 2 years, obviously the chance of someone else taking that opportunity is much higher. So think of Tanzania. It's really not the most developed society or digital economy across the African continent. And even the African continent itself sounds really promising from a German perspective, but I mean, it's much more sophisticated like that. You have Nigeria with Lagos, 26 million in one place. It's booming. I mean, most of the rocket companies are based there. In East Africa, where we are, it's clearly Kenya leading the game, but still, also for personal reasons, having these roots in Tanzania, we are happy to be in Tanzania because it has, in German there's this nice word, Windschatten. You know, it's in a very nice position in the market where you can actually have some space in front of you. And I think it really needs to solve a problem, whatever you do, because high risk, you need to put something against it. And don't forget that it should be able to make money from it and to actually really have a margin. If the market is a kind of a market that, given its transparency or its volatility, just doesn't allow big margins or gatekeeper positions for your business, I don't think it's got enough potential. So this is sort of my due diligence checklist for what I do and not invest in, because I'm not that. Oh yeah, excitement is really important. I've almost forgot it. I'm so happy it's moving. Because I think if you don't do something that can potentially excite people to their bone, it's also really hard as a startup because you don't have the budget for marketing and all that. You need stuff that's exciting. And that doesn't necessarily go along with solving a problem, because solving a problem is hygienically, is a hygienic factor, and excitement is an excitement factor. Impact. I'm looking for stuff that has large impact. How does impact differ from potential? I just like to reach a lot of people. I like to do something that is qualitatively very important to every person that is being reached. It makes a big difference for them. That can go along with solving a problem, but not necessarily is there always a problem already in their mind. So, social, I think if you decide to start a business in a world that we live in that is in game betting, you should really think of how to structure this to make it accountable to this world. But I think that if we use our entrepreneurial potential that's in this room and in this world, and we keep just in mind what all we can do for the better by creating businesses, even if it's really creating jobs and thereby education and all of that. That's really important to me. And also, I think if you don't have a technological impact, if it doesn't make a technological difference, it's just not likely enough to stay around. And to me personally, it's not sexy. There's, by the way, this is a picture of a company called Mobisol. You should maybe all heard of. If not, check them out. And then this stuff should be, whatever you do should be fun, because especially in this case with Tupomoja, this is probably going to keep me busy for the next 5 to 10 years. And the things I did before haven't, because it was in Germany. The cycles were quicker. The topics were more overseeable. Yes. So with the stuff I mentioned earlier, I switched topics every 2.5 years. This is going to take much longer, and therefore, even more than, it has to be fun. And for me, it is fun if there's a team that I love to go to work with and that I engage with. It's fun if I like the role I have. There's a note from my desk at home, the CEO battlefield, where I kind of, this makes me nervous and calms me down at the same time. Every time I look at it, it kind of has all topics on it that I have to kind of keep in mind every day. And that is a role that I really love. So then it's fun for me. If this wouldn't be compatible with my family life, especially since you could tell it's a young family, barely a child myself, if you don't have fun at home, or if your family doesn't have fun at home, you won't for long. So this is really, I mean, you could listen to success stories of entrepreneurs working 16 hours a day and focusing on anything else, but we'll get to that later, but to me it doesn't work. And also, I have to like the surrounding, and I mean that in a social and also in a physical way. Tanzania is a beautiful country. The people I get to meet through this job are pretty exciting, and it's really fun. So, what have I learned as someone who came new on the African continent from the time being with Tupomoja? Just, I think, 6 takeaways. Some of them might sound no-brainish, but I think it's important to keep this in mind. If you want to win followers for a risky endeavor, employees, partners, co-founders, what or not, for your startup company, especially on grounds like Africa, you need to create safety. There's no such thing as, hey, you should all be as excited as me, the founder. Let's all crash our financials. Let's all believe in the next big thing. You can do that as a founder. You should as a team, but if you want to win followers to join your journey, you need to create safety for them. Get them a flat. Get them if your company crashes, have an idea in mind where to place them so that they don't sleep in the street because you crashed your business. You need to create safety for your family, for your employees, for anyone who would be considered a follower and supporter of your business. Europe is not the place to find money to be invested in Africa. It's a bold conclusion. I'd be happy to discuss, but I think, especially in Germany, we are just too well set with the stuff we know. And we do risky investments when we know the field, but not knowing this non-e-commerce kind of e-commerce business and Africa being so far away really gets me into weird discussions here in Africa. Here in Germany. So I found it much easier to talk to investors in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia, in the USA. In the USA, it is for different reasons than, for example, in the Middle East. I would guess in the USA they have just another investment climate. They are more familiar with larger markets. Obviously, we're not limited to Tanzania. All East African countries who have Swahili as their main language sum up to 218 million people. That's a nice market to target. And then, well, think big, but the US investors can relate to that much better than to Germans only seeing Tanzania. And it's rightly so. We'll get to the fragmentation of Africa in a second. But and the Middle East and maybe some parts of East Europe, me being from Czech Republic partly, maybe allows me to say that, face culturally comparable issues. In Czech Republic, there is this company Mall.cz, e-commerce company. They have counters where you can come and pick up your product that you've delivered and pay by credit card or cash, but at the very moment you get the product, just because trust is an issue. You order during the day, and on your way home, you pass that station. Especially in the Middle East, where there's much more to be built up within these countries, where you need to take higher risks to get forward quicker. I think investors are just more open to go to Africa. This guy once said, if you're honest about your software, you should build your hardware too, or something like that. And I feel the same in terms of our business and any business really you would start in Africa. If I could translate this to, if you're honest about your online marketing, you should deliver the product yourself. Because there's just too many uncertain factors that kind of raise the risk. If you try to find a partner that does proper delivery, you will find one until you find out they're not. You just can't know so many things. You're better off to think of it on a bold, green field and build it yourself. And it's not really going to work out like that. There's so many people I talk to that get inspired and think, okay, I'm going to move to Africa. And isn't it nice on Zanzibar? And I mean, it's online business. I could work anywhere. And we're a global team already, my ex-co-founders and I, and we have Skype. Well, you don't have Skype that easily when you really need it in Africa. Of course there's internet. I don't want to kind of, paint a wrong picture, but honestly, in terms of reliability, it's a different game. So if you don't really get yourself and your team into Africa or have Africa on your team in terms of people who've been born and raised, know the language, know their way around, you will not only not be able to work, but also not really find the trust in partnerships. If you talk to, let's say we have a deal with a publishing group, they wouldn't respect us if they wouldn't know that we have personal relationships and feelings and family bonds with that country and history, and we're honest about the success of the local economy and so on. So I wouldn't have ever started this. Well, I might have, but then it would have turned out very stupid. But having this experience, how well it is with a team that's based and raised in Africa, I would tell you the same. This is not the countries in Africa, but it's the countries even subdivided by ethnical groups. This is another learning that I would love to pass on, that you can't really necessarily talk about Africa. And I mean, Fabian, who has traveled the continent with his buses and so on, could tell stories about it. It's a highly diverse continent, enormously huge continent. And if you think about starting business or expanding into Africa, find out first whether it's more suitable in the developed South, in countries with special problems because they have oil but therefore have other unsolved problems, for more tourist-driven countries, for countries up in the north that are culturally not rather somehow related in the MENA section, or really try to differentiate within Africa. And then the last point, this is really, I mean, being and working in Tanzania is a struggle, and it's not only for someone like me coming from outside. There's so much work to do, there's so much sun, there's so much stress. I don't blame anyone for not getting their stuff done in the way I would consider it to be possible from a German perspective. So that's why I'm saying this game might take 5 to 10 years. And since this is being recorded, I don't want to be too challenging, but I would really love to see how quickly Rocket coming in from externally can build substantial roots in the markets they tap into. You can solve a lot with problems. You can solve a lot with money, I want to say. But I think if you're a startup, as we all picture it, with limited funds, it could be a couple of million, but still limited, you have to kind of adjust to the pace and get the people to join with you. So a couple of things, maybe further away from the pure African experience that I have experienced in my chapters as an entrepreneur that I wouldn't like to repeat. I would not again waste time on trying to compensate my weaknesses and therefore not be able to build upon the strengths I think I have. It's always interesting for me to speak in a university because I went to 2 universities, but I'm really not that much of a university kind of guy. And I think I always wanted to be because I wasn't, and I wouldn't do that again because you waste a lot of time. It's not a waste to go to university. I'm not saying this on the internet, but you have to make your personal call. I wasn't born an entrepreneur or a businessman. I wanted to do things. I wanted to bring ideas to life. So I got into this whole scene that it could be interesting to build a company around it, or it could be necessary. So I kind of felt like a naive student trying to get stuff out there and done into this business world. And I had to learn a couple of lessons. And one is that if you're doing business, it's opposing counsel. And you should always be in line and brutally honest with your partners inside your boat. But don't be the nice guy on the battlefield, because you can always be kind and rewarding and nice once you've won. But I think as much as I'm a fan of being a nice person, in business it's really important to claim your stake and then decide what to do. So I would never point my negotiating partner to a mistake I see them making just because I think it's nice. No-brainer, actually. Why did I have to learn this the hard way? So another thing, having started companies from scratch and also inside corporations and with investors or without, I wouldn't start anything else anymore without at least some external money. Not so much because of the money, but because of the proof. You fight different discussions in the beginning when you try to convince someone to invest, even if it's little money. You're less likely to get stuck with your idea in your little room. And also, you're less likely to be sucked into a player's attitude in terms of gambling with your future. I believe in this, that's enough. No. There's going to be a lot of other people who are going to have to believe in what you're doing for it to work. So I think taking money in the beginning is not, investors will eventually tell you else, well, we put our money, why aren't you taking this risk yourself? And hey, you're the entrepreneur, they're the investor. That's their job, your job is to work. Yeah, keep your money where it is. I do sound smart ass, I didn't want to. But I feel very strong about this. The other thing is, a business relationship, I feel, on an individual one-to-one relation is always a bit like a personal relationship. A business talk could maybe receive the same respect as we would treat a date with. Because, especially in the entrepreneurial context, there's so many emotions going on with your partner, whoever you're talking to, that I got very careful about underestimating the surrounding of the conversation and the context of important discussions. Yes, there's rules I try to live by in terms of bad news first. You know, quick communications, don't lose time. That's all good. But if you underestimate the complexity of ideas and emotions and topics behind what's happening between you and your partner on his side, you might cause a big scene. So don't underestimate taking time and preparing conversations like that. At least I wouldn't want to repeat not to. And then also another thing I would try to not do anymore is depend my decisions on a very person. I can only be successful if this will be my co-founder. I won't start before this person joins as an employee. This investor is the only one who can actually give us access to. No. You have a profile for these positions, be it a co-founder, your sidekick employee, your investor, your mentor, and there are billions of people out there, right? It's just tough to find them. Not if you use 250 tags in your address book. But really, this leads, there's this thing in HR where decisions on placements are being made quickly because then there's a solution and then it ends up being the wrong person if you're not patient enough. It's exactly the same thing. So if you come from a corporate context and talk to your HR people, it's pretty much the same thing. And then, as a last closing chapter, and also to maybe open up for some discussions afterwards, even maybe outside the room, I'd like to be open and honest about some things that circle around my head these times, and that I don't have really perfect answers for. So maybe you have, and then I'd be really excited to hear it. One thing I really ask myself is, and it's an individual question, but what is really best for me in terms of networking? Would it be a large and thereby necessarily weaker network? Or would it be a rather small and very intensely managed network of close people that share experiences with my work too, and so on? So I try to manage this. I do events, I do mails in groups, I try to kind of be more or less strategic with my social media life and so on. And I'm sure many of you think about this. Do I start building groups within Facebook or friend lists or not? Should my friends from school see what I want to post because of my colleagues and all of that? And I don't have the perfect answer. Where on that? Let's break it down to that very simple scale between large and weak and small and strong. What can be really perfectly managed? I feel like I'm thrifting from one year to another, more this, more that. And obviously entering a new market or business like it with Supermoja brings you a lot of new contacts. You have to kind of repack your bag, rename your tags, and adjust. And that could keep you from other stuff. So networking is really a thing that keeps me thinking. This other thing that I'm thinking about is if everybody is now to disrupt industries. Who was at the conference? Anyone? Cool. This is Tetsche and Travis from Uber. Tetsche from Daimler. And if everybody is disrupting the big industries, is there a gap for the more incremental solutions next door? Is there a space for an entrepreneur that creates some runway and some space to pivot? Or, in a different perspective, a friend of mine I was on the phone with did an exit today. He works at a VC of one of those Groupon clone companies that were up and running for the last years. And he said, well, he thinks that now that this is off the radar, and with the experiences made from that, and nobody really thinks about it anymore, there's huge potential in that market to build something more solid. This was disrupting in the first place, but what comes after? So I think if you kind of take this idea of disrupting industries and think to the left and to the right of its timing, there's interesting potential for entrepreneurs, and I'm still not sure whether it's a good trade-off or whether that disruption kind of gives you the relevance because it's the trend. You decide for the industries you're interested in. One other thing I'm thinking of is how do you actually educate or gain knowledge through education without limiting down or narrowing your perspective. Once you've been through certain standard books, that's probably what you think. I mean, you might be a critical person, and that's important, and they teach you that in university too. But I find it hard to remain innocent knowledge-wise and still gain facts and information to work with. So maybe for some of you in the education field, you have an idea for me. What I also think about is I really like to do many different projects. I'm very focused on Supermoja, but from my track record you could tell that it wasn't 5 years corporate and then 5 years startup number one, failed, now startup number two. I'm more of a Hans Dampf in Allen Gassen in Germany, you would say. And I wonder if that's working out. But I feel like that's the right thing to do. And even within Supermoja, I try to think into various directions, because I was talking about this earlier. I think pivoting as a startup is a very important thing. So you need to have your eyes elsewhere. And I wonder if this is really possible, because we preach monogamy. We say, okay, there's only one thing you can focus on. How is this with business? Because there's so much passion involved. Don't have an answer. And that's the last question I was really asking myself. And I'd be very happy if you have an answer. And if there's questions now, I'd be more than happy to take them. I just hope this was somehow inspiring on your end, because I know this already, and it's actually not so super important. It's just what I do. And if you can somehow connect this to what you do, and then it becomes important, that would be the goal of today. So thank you all for listening, and let me know if there's anything I can can answer to.